Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Swapnil.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Huh. Mahadevan sir, Raghavan sir has also joined. Shall we start now?
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Shall we start now, sir? Participants, sir, they are keep joining, or we'll wait for 2-3 minutes. 20. Good afternoon, Mahadevan sir. I could see you on board. Shall we start, sir?
Yeah, very much. Actually,
Yes.
but there are only 22 participants. But this
Yeah,
is
22. Yeah.
it is
Or else
such
we'll
an
wait.
important topic. Specifically,
Yes.
many students are interested in this area.
Yes,
So
sir.
once,
Yes,
so maybe I think they were not able to join about a few minutes back.
Yes,
Maybe
sir.
1 or 2
Maybe.
minutes we can wait now. Possibly now the time
Yes,
is
sir.
3:10 already.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
we
Yes,
can
sir.
maybe some 1 or 2 minutes you can give and then start.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because machine learning is something which is there in the mind of every student nowadays.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so definitely they would like to hear
Yes,
from
sir.
a real expert today.
Yeah, for students. For students, sir, we have kept YouTube link.
So no problem. I think possibly then you can start
Yeah. We'll.
because we are
But
already
still,
already
yes,
more than 10 minutes. I think we should
yes.
start.
So a warm afternoon to all present here. The galaxy of intellectuals, invited guests, renowned academicians, and dear research scholars. I, Shahnaz Ayub, your host today on behalf of Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, BIT Jhansi, and on my own behalf, I welcome you all to session 2 of 4th day of FDP on electromagnetics to 5G, jointly organized by BIT Jhansi, SPIU UP, ISTE, and Numergion. Albert Einstein said, "We cannot solve problems with the same thinking we used to create them." Yes, we have among us who solves the problem with different approach like machine learning. Dr. Datta Prasad Torse. Dr. Datta Prasad Torse is Associate Professor in Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, KLS Gogde Institute of Technology, Belgavi, Karnataka. He has 18 years of experience. Dr. Torse earned his PhD from Vishweshwaraya Technological University, VTU, in 2018 in biomedical signal analysis and machine learning. He has presented 18 papers in IEEE and Springer International Conferences and many papers in international journals of repute. To his credit, he has filed one patent in the field of IoT and machine learning. Dr. Datta Prasad Torse is coordinating machine learning and deep learning research activities for students and faculty at Center for Artificial Intelligence, KLS GIT, in collaboration with Bennett University's leading India AI initiative. Apart from these achievements, I would like to add here, we were attending online FDP on signal processing organized by College of Engineering Pune together. In that there was one group activity and group had to present the project idea based on the theme and suitable to Atmanirbhar Bharat. Coincidentally, Dr. Torse was my teammate and his working in team was excellent. So from that moment, I know Dr. Datta Prasad Torse's other abilities also. Sir will deliver the talk on machine learning applications in electromagnetics. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for your kind words and introduction. I'll share my screen.
Yes, sir.
I hope it is visible to all.
No, not yet, sir. It is coming as Datta Prasad Torse has started sharing the screen, but screen has not appeared yet. Yes, now it's clear, sir.
Yeah,
First slide is there, title slide.
first slide is visible. Okay.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Because I am new to this Zoom.
Okay, no problem, sir.
Okay, fine.
So without full screen, I think this is also okay. Can be. Is it okay, or you want to do full screen?
It's okay. I can do.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, sir. Yeah. Please, sir, continue.
But it is better to have full screen because sometimes when the figures are there, intricacies may not be seen properly. Yeah, this is nice.
Yes.
This is nice.
I'll switch on my video in between, but in order to save bandwidth, I'll keep the video off.
Okay.
I'll switch it on later, sometimes while interacting with participants.
Okay. Okay.
Raghavan sir, thank you very much for your kind words. As you said, expert in this field, but I would say I'm just started learning this. Of course, machine learning I have used for biomedical signal processing, but this particular field in which today I'm talking, I think earlier also when I organized the FDP, you were there, and I would like to thank Swapnil sir also because of his contacts. I actually started relearning, or you can say restarted this work in the field of electromagnetics. So I thank Swapnil sir. I thank Shahnaz madam. It was a really wonderful experience when we interacted during that FDP conducted by COEP Pune. So all these communications happening during these webinars are really giving us good opportunities to learn, to interact, and to share what little work we are doing so that we can also enhance our knowledge. So I thank BIET Jhansi, SPIU, which is a special project, state project, and ISTE, of course. And as I said, finally, the main thanks to Swapnil sir, because the series of webinars I have been attending, and I am hearing Swapnil sir again and again, still not satisfied because I want this COVID situation to end, and I call him personally once to my institute and arrange his lecture and hands-on sessions. So let's see when it happens. Okay, so coming to the topic which I have selected today is the work that I have done in the field of, I would say, electromagnetics. We have the first slide, and if I take, this is just, I was thinking when even I was unable to join just a moment back, I was thinking, how should I start? Because all the participants and experts who are attending this particular webinar are having a mindset that we are going to learn something electromagnetics, microwaves, antennas, and design of antennas, and then which leads to the latest trend, which is in the title 5G. So that's a really good journey. The title itself is very catchy because it takes from fundamentals of electromagnetics to 5G. But I would take this opportunity here on the slide itself to draw a line that we have this kind of journey. We are moving from 5G to electromagnetics to 5G. Okay, but what I say is I'm just taking a small diversion here. Although this diversion is not going to take you a long distance from 5G, but this particular area which I have shown here on the slide, this was just idea came in my mind that it's an afternoon session, and if I start something new from the first slide, the participants may disconnect. And once the disconnection happens from the very first or second slide, then it becomes very difficult to get back the attention. So I was just drawing a small diagram on a piece of paper that I should tell you that the journey is going to happen from electromagnetics to 5G only during this webinar series. But I'm taking you a small diversion, and this diversion, of course, the path or this diversion you can consider as this machine learning. Okay, and this is very similar to how we travel from one city to the other city. We encounter some area in between which looks very beautiful from the place where we are sitting, whether it is a train or flight or a bus. So this particular area, what I'm showing you today, is microwave heating. Okay, it sounds different suddenly because there was this was not there in title. You must have seen the brochure or the schedule sent, and it was clearly written that the speaker is going to talk about machine learning in electromagnetics. So our journey definitely has started from electromagnetics. All the lectures are going wonderful. We are definitely reaching up to 5G, going to gain good knowledge of 5G, but a small diversion here. And this particular area is microwave heating. But I would say participants have all the freedom to rename this area. It's like renaming the city and make it as either antenna design, antenna optimization, microwave passive device optimization, microwave active circuit optimization. But the journey will be through machine learning, and the journey will be with the aim of optimizing that particular circuit. So this is the introduction I want to give you about the topic that I'm going to talk today. So the agenda for today's topic, yes, this is the first sentence. I was worried if I say I'm going to introduce you to microwave heating, most of the participants will think microwave heating, it was not there in the topic at all. It is neither connected to electromagnetics or not to 5G technologies or communication technologies, which we are talking about. Yes, it is right. But microwave heating is an integral part of industrial heating in order to manufacture products. And this is one application area. As I defined a small area, as I said, it's a small city. You can always rename it. You bring in microwave circuit design, microwave antenna design, but learn how to optimize it using machine learning. This is going to be my entire lecture. So I'm going to introduce you to microwave heating. Of course, as Sir rightly said expert, but I said not expert, but still a learner or just started a journey. I would even like to collaborate with some of the experts who are attending this particular lecture and work together so that we can do some better work in the field of electromagnetics, RF and microwave. So I'll introduce you to microwave machine learning and how machine learning is used in microwave heating. So when microwave heating word 2-3 times I mentioned, by this time, many participants must have imagined a microwave oven, which almost everyone uses at home. Yes, that's a microwave heating, but it's an industrial microwave heating, which is, as I said, integral part of any manufacturing process, because today it is the most common process in industry for wide applications. Whether it is sintering, curing or drying, every product has to go through a heating process. And it is said that any product that we see, which is coming out of an industry, the quality of the product depends on the type of heating or the kind of heating that it has experienced. If heating is excellent, the finishing of the product or the working of the product is also excellent. So there are some issues which come into microwave heating and how we can address them with the help of machine learning. Okay, I'm mainly focusing, I assume that most of the participants in this FDP, of course, because it is on electromagnetics and 5G, are from electronics and telecommunication department. There is no a particular intention to say this, but computer science and related researchers, excuse me if there are some from computer science background, but even in some instances, we electronics and telecommunication background researchers, when it comes to machine learning, we take the online data. The most popular one is available from Kaggle in the form of images of cats or dogs, or some signals which are now biomedical is also entering into this field. It has already entered. Biomedical is a vast application, and biomedical signals such as ECG, EEG. So all these data sets are widely available. They are very well tested, and they are available with good results using machine learnings. So there is no harm. We can always use them. You can test our algorithms, but machine learning algorithms fail to perform when we generate the data. So I thought I should talk about what possible experimental environments we should create in order to acquire the data, whether it is in a laboratory. We take ECG or EEG data available online. The machine learning algorithm fantastically works. But when we go to the doctor, we take the data from him, digitize it, use the proper Nyquist criteria or sampling theorem, yet the machine learning algorithm performs 50% as that of what it does on online data. So we should focus on experimental environment, how to acquire data. Finally, I'm going to spend some time on antenna design and machine learning because that is our main topic. Although I would like to say that I have done a very little work in this particular domain. Sorry, sir?
No, sir, you continue, please.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Machine learning in antenna design. Hardly 2 or 3 slides are there. So let us define, for participants, it's a request or appeal, you can say, that let us define that particular area, whether we want it into hardware as a passive active microwave circuits, or we want to do it in the software where we gather antenna design parameters and optimize their designs using machine learning. Then of course, I'm going to talk about some future scope, possible future scopes, and going to conclude this talk. So talking about microwave heating, we all know heating is done using conventional techniques. So compared to conventional techniques, when we talk about microwave heating, the microwave heating is much superior compared to the conventional heating. The reason, the microwave heating uses reduced energy and it is very fast. It is not time consuming. The other advantage of microwave heating is it is selective and controllable, whereas the conventional heating is not selective or controllable. The reason why conventional heating is not selective or controllable, because I think I'll show you it in the next slide, because in conventional heating, the surface of any material that we are heating, it always gets first hotter and then the heat is transferred to the core, because heat flows from surface to the core. However, microwave heating is one such phenomenon in which whether it is surface or core, any corner of the material, the heat is simultaneously produced and equally distributed. So due to this and the reduced energy and reduced time of heating, selective and controllable nature, microwave heating is very popular in industries, especially the industries in which there is material heating happens, such as industries such as sintering, then there is heating, molding, or I have also listed them, some of them. Yeah, food and rubber industries, pharmaceutical industries, polymers, plastics. I have an example just noted here from one references. There is one material known as carbon fiber reinforced polymer, CFRP. If we search about this CFRP by putting another keyword in Google, Boeing 787, then we will be surprised to see that in 2017, the entire part except the engine, of course, entire part of Boeing 787 was proposed to build using this CFRP material. And this material is so advantageous in manufacturing of this particular airplane that it was forecasted in 2017 that around 17% of the expenditure what happens in the manufacturing of this airplane is reduced. 17% is a quite big number, which in US dollar comes around 7.3 billion. This is information I noted down for this particular example. So microwave heating, no doubt, in any industry is superior as compared to conventional heating. So let me come back to this. Okay. As shown in the slide, the physical properties of material such as conductivity, specific heat capacity, and mass density, these are some physical properties of the material taken into consideration when we talk about microwave heating. Microwave heating's flow rate has to be accelerated. So how to do that? There are possible solutions which industries have already adopted is to use multiple sources of microwave energies. They use materials which move on conveyor belts so that they can they can be heated with a different time and different heating rates. But there are some issues in microwave heating. The issues such as the thicker heated products. The heating of thicker heated products with a single source is always an advantageous phenomenon in microwave heating compared to products which are heated with less thicker surfaces and heated with multiple sources. Because when multiple sources are used and there is a switching between one microwave source to other microwave source, there is a large temperature variation. And this temperature variation can result into a phenomenon which we have defined in this slide as called local overheating or hotspot generation, or it is also called as thermal runaway. Okay, this slide I already explained is explaining capability of microwave heating. It is a volumetric heating ability. It heats the entire volume of a material at one instant, because the microwave energy is directly transferred into the heat inside the heated material. So a clear difference is seen in these two diagrams when conventional heating happens and when microwave heating happens. We can see the profile shown at the right side, hot to cold. The material initially is cold at the core when conventional heating technique is used, but the heat is quickly transferred in the entire structure when microwave heating is used. So microwave heating gives us temperature control, the core heats faster, and it is something known as working with the inverse temperature profile. Okay. Let me now go to the problem that we experience in microwave heating and of course the applications which I already mentioned. There are challenges in microwave heating. There are advantages also, which I already mentioned: reduced energy time consumption, selective and controllable heating. But at the same time, there are challenges also. As heating a particular element, a single workpiece with a single source, has always advantages because there is a homogeneity in workpiece, and also there are certain levels of heats at which heating is generated. But when we use a thinner heating material and heating sources are more, there is always a possibility of local overheating or hotspot or thermal runaway. It is said that in one of the references, failures in the product development in microwave heating industry is directly proportional to the temperature distribution that has happened during the heating process. So temperature distributions have become a major problem associated with the microwave heating. So the question mark is why it happens so. Why microwave heating results into the thermal runaways or the local hotspots. The reason is temperature distribution in microwave heating is not only the transfer of temperature. Now we come to the exact topic or exact title of this FDP, but it also deals with the electromagnetic field distribution within the microwave cavity. I will show you microwave structure, how it looks. few participants, I assume that they are already aware of microwave cavities and microwave heating systems. It is very similar to our microwave oven, but electromagnetic field distribution within microwave cavity, when there is variation in EM field and temperature distribution, both these phenomenons govern jointly results into the thermal runaway. And this variation, what we say, a variation word or the differentiation, partial differentiation, what we say, is a motivation to consider machine learning into a controller design. So this is going to be basically a heat controller design. We have adaptive heat control design, you have heard. Okay, we use variety of techniques, adaptive filters or adaptive controllers. This is going to be a neural network based controller design for controlling heating temperatures or heating performances of various sources. So I hope with these 3 or 4 slides, I'm clear with what I'm going to talk in the next, you can say half an hour or 45 minutes, right? So local overheating or thermal, that's why I've made it red. Local.
Dr. Torse, there is one question from Raghavan sir. He is asking about the difference between microwave diathermy and microwave heating.
Once again, ma'am, I just see the
correlation between microwave diathermy and microwave heating.
Okay. Actually, I have not come across diathermy. Microwave diathermy, Raghavan sir, if I'm not wrong, used in biomedical field?
Yes, yes.
Yes. The difference is of power only. Is it clear? It is about only the power. That's why in the slides I have shown, when there is no little possibility to acquire the data from the actual heating furnaces, we can always go with the microwave sources, low power microwave sources, which are available in the laboratories. So if I'm not wrong, microwave diathermy and the microwave heating has the difference of only, because we use imaging in both the cases, in diathermy as well as in heating. So when imaging is used, the difference should be, according to me, I will go, I'll just record this particular question and I'll go in more depth on this particular topic, should be only with respect to the power levels that we are dealing with. Okay, ma'am? Fine. So let's continue and let's take these questions once again so that we can get more insight on this particular topic. Okay. As I said, the temperature distribution in microwave heating is not only determined by the properties of workpiece, but it's also governed by the electromagnetic field distribution within the cavity. This I mentioned in the previous slide. So it becomes very complex issue when we need to control the heat distribution on the workpiece, especially when we have multiple sources. So it is easy if we have a single source. We can go with a microcontroller based control system, which we use as on-off controller or as a variation in temperature controller. But when there are multiple sources heating different parts of material, or if the material is moving on a conveyor belt, then definitely we need an adaptive system which is more powerful than the conventional one. This is a typical diagram of modern control system. All the parameters are, okay, let me tell you now what motivated us. I think the title, the reference which I have pasted with all the details. This is a report, in fact, which is published by Yiming, Sun Yiming. This is our main motivation. I was working with biomedical, as I said, and I have seen my colleagues working with MRI images, then brain tumor images or bone fracture images. When I saw so many people working with images, and there is a convolutional neural network giving best performance with the help of neural network, with the help of images, why can't we think of an issue? And of course, the another important factor which helped me is an industry. I'm going to talk about it later. an industry which is in the close vicinity of our institute, known as Energy Microwave System. An interaction with the CEO of that industry gave us this idea that we are facing issues with, in fact, they were working on a rubber molding project in which we have seen car glasses are fixed with a rubber at the edges. They were manufacturing that, and they used to frequently get malfunctioned product. There was an issue where the heating of the material, you can imagine now, we have so many places, if you look around the room, you have these rubbers fixed everywhere, window panels or different objects which are fixed. But the company's project one was on providing these rubber moldings for glasses, car glasses. So when we interacted with them, they said this is the material, it goes on a conveyor belt, and we need a solution in order to determine and control the temperature. So we have succeeded partially, I should say. I don't say we have given them full solution. We're still working on it, trying to get more and more images. I will come to that point later when we start introduction on the neural network. So a model control system, as shown in this diagram, will work on a simple concept that we have an image and various temperature parameters of that image. Now, this is not recorded using any optical fiber sensor or any temperature sensor. This is recorded with the help of infrared camera. When image came into picture, the idea of neural network clicked, which is working much better, as I said earlier, on cats and dogs images. At a certain extent, it works better on online images, which are, we can say, for brain tumor or any other bone fracture, I mean biomedical images. Then we thought of area. That's why I said that diagram which I showed, the circle or the area which I showed, if you can imagine of changing that area, then there are n number of applications surrounding where there is a requirement of an adaptive control, a modern control system. A novel adaptive control, temperature control concept, we tried to introduce using neural networks for microwave heating. And it was only a challenge to estimate the temperature and power relation. So this was a major reference for us. You can freely download this particular link. Later, the group is active. I can also share this particular document. This report you can go through thoroughly. There is a lot of mathematics explained here, which I'm not going to cover at this point of time. So we take images, we take temperature parameters, we use some system estimation or identification technique. We do pre-processing, what we call, and we develop a predictive or adaptive control model. It can be a neural network controller, or it can be a model predictive control, modern predictive controller, anything. Any system can be used. In neural networks also, we have variety of options wherein we can explore them and find out which performs best. Coming to the next slide. This is the system we need in order to get the experimental data. If we are good with experimental data, then our, I should say 50% work is done, I should say. The remaining 50% work depends on identifying algorithms, tuning those algorithms, finding out the results from experts. And of course, in this particular field, the experts are those who are actually working on that particular plant, because they know, they are the decision makers who discard a particular product when they observe manually that this particular product has failed. But the decision comes only after the product is damaged. The decision should come well in advance so that some action can be taken and the damage to the product can be prevented. So structure of microwave heating system starts with a power supply, where power supply is given to a microwave generator such as magnetron. This is a very popular in industries because it can generate high power or high frequencies. High, obviously it is microwave, high power microwave signal. And there is an antenna in the form of a rectangular waveguide or slotted section which transmits this power into a microwave heating applicator. There is a temperature measurement system required, and there is a process control also required, which are both at the top and bottom side. We need to record the data, and then from that data we need to do some manipulations and develop a process control system. In a more simplest way, structure of microwave heating system looks like this. This diagram we all study in many basic engineering subjects. So I don't go with microwave generator, waveguides or microwave cavities. We all know that generator is required in order to generate the signal, waveguides to carry them, and the cavity is where we are actually going to place the material or heated load. This was one taken from the reference. This was quite complex. I haven't seen this in picture only. I have seen. I tried to Google and explore more details about this HEPHAISTOS system, which acronym itself is so big. High electromagnetic power heated, automated, injected structure oven system. So this is not my work. Wherever I have mentioned reference one, that was actually a motivation for me to work. We, on similar lines, visited the industry and asked them, can you show us some of the heating ovens? So we came across this one. So this is one, again, an image courtesy goes to the energy.co company, which is into sintering and furnace. You can visit this particular website and see they're really doing good in the field of microwave heating. So the features of this particular tab sinter are 50 mm of effective hot zone for a particular material. As I said, there is a material moving inside it. There is a conveyor belt also. So the structure looking in this particular diagram is their final end product. I have one block diagram in the next slide, which may not look very similar to this diagram, but it is exactly what this box is looking. This is a final finished product. So they have nicely placed controllers on one side. Then there is a door on the left side, and everything looks very neat. But the structure that we actually studied for this was something different. So the maximum temperature here is up to 1550 degrees centigrades. It works for 1.45 kilowatt power, and it is used mainly in sintering, in inert, reducing or oxidizing atmosphere. So they have used a state-of-the-art PID controller inside this. So this is where we tried to tell them that along with your PID controller, how about a system which works with the neural networks, which gives more better results compared to the PID controller. Or you can say it is along with the PID controllers, the PID controller itself working on the principles of neural networks. Structure of the heating, let me go back and show. Yeah, this microwave cavity, what we see here, its structure in more detail is shown here so that we get a clear idea of where, this is again from the reference. Our structure was something different, not so well structured. The HEP structure, what I showed, is a well structured for getting this information. So the thermal camera was placed at one end, and then there were 12 different locations at which the slotted antennas were placed so that the temperature distribution can be studied. And there was a metal table for heated load. Okay, I'll go to this slide later because we are in continuation with the experimental setup. We look at this diagram. The diagram I showed here, yes, this is very much similar to this. Although both the diagrams look different because that is a product diagram and this is a block diagram. So you should correlate this diagram with the previous product diagram. They do not have a solid source, solid state source. They have magnetron only. Let me tell you this, because even this diagram I have referred from an online system for high temperature dielectric property measurement, but exactly same system was developed in the particular product. So where there is a magnetron, circulator, a directional coupler connected to the power meter. Power meter, of course, is what we see on the display board. Then there was a waveguide inside, and this waveguide was connected with a separator of directional coupler in between to a cavity. So cavity is missing here. That is because the end product, what we see as a matching load itself here is a cavity. And we placed the infrared sensor. We all know that we cannot keep the door open. So we, while in the process of manufacturing, we asked them an infrared camera. Let me tell you the details of the camera also, which I noted. It was initially procurement done by the industry itself in order to get more detail inside. So they used the Bosch GTC camera, we were of opinion of using FLIR. I'll share all these details. There is no problem in sharing these details because these are available online. If you have funding, procurement is possible, then this kind of experiment is possible for microwave heating applications. So FLIR and Bosch, these two cameras were used, infrared temperature cameras. I have written only sensors, but here data acquisition was done. We used, now I can go back to this diagram, previous diagram, which I skipped. Yeah. Now we did some programming part using LabVIEW and MATLAB. We use LabVIEW because for FLIR, there is a toolkit available. LabVIEW thermo imaging toolkit is available. We have licensed version of LabVIEW and MATLAB both. So we did a little experiment on getting the images, thermal images. Once we got the images, we were like, as I said, 50% work done. Then later, no visit to the industry required, as we have only discussion with the experts to label this data. So to talk about that, I must go to the next slide. Okay, I skipped this. This slide is only again for mentioning why not fiber optic sensor and why only infrared camera. And when infrared camera gave better results, better temperature profiles of images, we decided to go with algorithms which are most suited with images, and those are neural network algorithms. Yeah, again same, showing the temperature comparison between fiber optic sensor and IRC. Compared to fiber optic sensor, the temperature deviation in IRC was much smaller. So that gave us added advantage of using images. Now comes the microwave. Now comes the data available, how to model it. So in order to model the two assumptions given here, I forgot to mention, I think reference, the two assumptions given in that reference was the load is receiving most of the electromagnetic heating energy from top surface, because it was a turntable, and the same way the turntable was arranged in the tab center which I showed. So from top surface the energy is received. The thickness of the load is much smaller compared to the wavelength of the microwave. This is always the case when microwave heating applications are done. So these two assumptions were a guarantee for us, so that there is surface temperature distribution and of the load, and it is equal to the temperature distribution within the load. So these two advantages. Apart from this, I also noted down one important point that I wanted to mention, that when profile of this microwave heating system was generated, there were no signs of, or there were no indications of large temperature variations. The temperature variations were very little as compared to the temperature variation that are recorded in the reference which I have given. So I assume that the people who have worked on the reference which I have taken have worked on systems which are working with a very high microwave heating powers. That's why, because power is large, the deviation is large. And since we were working only with 1.45 kilowatt of power, the deviations were also very less. Coming to the next point, yeah, this was a typical setup. Very similar setup was there, except with that rubber molding, which was moving on a conveyor belt. That I think I have shown in the next slide. Right. So we thought of modeling the system using a machine learning technique, and machine learning technique in literature is called as black box modeling, because in most of the times, if it is unsupervised, unlabeled, I'm going to come to this topic in the next slide, then we call it as a black box modeling, because we don't know what is happening inside. So compared to mathematical modeling, the black box modeling which ML technique used, it was advantageous because it was addressing more complex issues such as temperature variation from multiple sources, and when the product is moving on a particular belt, or you can say heating chamber. This was another technique referred again from this reference, but this was not applicable for our system unless for that rubber belt which I mentioned. So there is a conveyor belt on which the rubber is moving, the heating material is moving, and the heating is happening from multiple places. Of course, as I said, initially we tried only with the stationary object. Yeah, now I come to the actual topic. I think, what is the time now? It's 3:53. So till this point, is it okay, madam? You have any questions on in the chat box?
No, sir, that was the only question
Fine.
from Raghavan, sir.
Yeah.
Diathermy and microwave heating.
Yes, sir. Raghavan, sir, I would like to connect with you and study this particular topic in more depth. So now we come to,
just I will add one thing. I think Raghavan, sir, must be knowing it. In microwave diathermy, we generate with the help of magnetron. It is the treatment. It is not imaging instrument. It is therapeutic instrument.
okay. So
Microwave
again,
diathermy.
okay. So again, it's a variation in powers or probably the
Yeah,
rating
yeah.
and voltage.
Yeah.
rating. Right. Okay. Yes, ma'am. So now we come to the topic which machine learning starts. So why should we learn? The question comes is to introduce to you. I expect that most of, because in 5 to 6 years or more than that, in student community, this subject is becoming so popular that everybody, as Raghavan sir rightly pointed out, everybody is trying to learn this and gain hands-on experience on this. And the advantage is the huge literature available on this, whether it is programming in MATLAB, LabVIEW, or Python is becoming very popular now. Now Julia is becoming popular compared to Python. In whichever programming language we take, we have tutorials available. People are getting good support from everybody. So the reason is, that's the reason why the field is becoming more and more popular. And most important thing is the free availability of resources. I was there in the previous talk. I'm sorry, I could not attend it because of this academic activities lecture started, but I just saw one slide and one question asked, and that was exactly related to what I wanted to talk. And that was, what is the system requirement? If I'm not wrong, in the last lecture, the professor who was talking, this question was asked by a madam, like, what is the system requirement? Because most of the time the system becomes slow. I was there for a couple of minutes in the last session. So system requirement also is one issue in this particular field. So we have always online resources which are sometimes freely available. That can be another talk where I can talk only about the cloud services, free services, paid services, or going with a dedicated GPU machine. So it depends on how much data we have. So let's talk about machine learning. Machine learning is a technique in which we teach we use a programming languages for computers so that we can get an optimized performance for a specific set of data that we consider. And how this happens? This happens with the help of past experiences. So that's why I give all the credit to the people who are actually there on the floor, and they are working hard, standing in front of microwave furnaces or microwave chambers and continuously monitoring that particular product. I also give the credit to the neurologist or the assistants who are working with them, all the doctors, not necessarily neurologists, cardiologists also, because those are the people who have trained themselves by observing the ECG or EEG or EMG signals again and again, day and whole day, wherever they were. And they have now become human computers to make diagnostic decisions. But then there is always a possibility, after all, a human subjected to fatigue or emotional conditions tend to cause or tend to result into mistakes. So bringing, now for this particular application, at least human expertise does not exist, because expecting somebody to find out the temperature of a product inside the microwave oven is just out of imagination. So humans are unable to explain their expertise, why hotspot occurred, why in a particular material there was a damage or there was a crack in a product. So third point why machine learning is required is because our solutions are changing with time. At one point of time, when we say a particular material was heated because of heating variation in a specific heating source, the same thing may not be applicable to a different variety of material. Say when I say rubber and the metal, the heating temperatures or the heating times are very different compared in each case. So when we need something adaptable in the system, we go with the learning mechanism. Learning, when we say learning, exactly what we talk about learning. Learning is about taking the learned experience from experts. It is developing a model that has already learned from lot of previous data. So generally we develop models which optimize a particular task based on the data that they have learned previously. So second important thing why we should talk about this, of course, not in this case, but not even in a case of antenna, because when I do online searches, we have biomedical images, we have biomedical data, we have other industry related data, we have cat dog images, general images, or any other data in abundant, whether it is a Facebook, Twitter tweets, now it is Instagram. So huge of multimedia data is available, but hardly we have microwave industries which are developing microwave sintering or microwave heating products, and they have infrared camera installed, and they give a set of infrared camera images and tell us that use machine learning. So we should develop, now we should expand our boundaries of machine learning and come out of that limited data set which we have available. Type of data set I'm talking. We have huge number of Facebook data available, YouTube videos available, then tweets available, but we do not have application specific data still available. So that's why I was specifically mentioning about electronics and telecommunication engineers, because we have sensors in our hand. We know the processing techniques, we know the sampling theorem, we know how to convert an analog signal into digital and digitized images or digitized data in the form of text, video, or it can be a number, numeric data. That should be extensively available, and the knowledge also related to that should be utilized properly. Communication system also, there is a less data available. Of course, now we have MATLAB or Python toolboxes specifically dedicated to communication systems. We have data for 4G, we have data for the transmitters and receiver signals. We have a separate antenna toolbox in which we explore so much of things in MATLAB or Python. But any specific application where we can get data can truly give us the feeling of learning. So what we need to do now after the data is available, make use of this data and build a good and useful approximation to that particular data, which otherwise experts are doing, whether it is a cardiologist, neurologist, doctor, or the industry people. They are very well in understanding this damage in the structures as compared to the existing algorithms also. What is machine learning? Machine learning optimizes a performance based on the past experience. As a statistician, we get some inference from the data. We learn something from the data. So a statistician says that if you have the data, I will tell you the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, and all other parameters of this data. So you can make use of this information and take the necessary decision. From mathematician point of view also, anything which is differentiable, which can undergo partial differentiation, can be a great source in machine learning. So the role of researcher is to make use of all these background experiences and solve an optimization problem, or simply represent and evaluate the model for inference. So that's why I said that is where I earlier had drawn a small area like this and showed, and this is not only microwave heating, okay, but it can be anything. And that's why it is, I said here, as an open end application. So we are always open to get applications in this field in which machine learning is used. This is a quick study of machine learning techniques or types. In supervised, most of the time the data is clearly labeled, so the output is well known. We say that this particular product at this particular point has crossed the temperature limit. And even we mentioned those temperature features, that it has crossed the temperature of this much of degree. And that's the reason there is a damage. So we say, we label it as it is damaged or not damaged. Whether there is a fault or not fault. There is a thermal runaway, yes or no, in the binary form as well as in continuous form. So direct feedback is given. There is always a predicted outcome and also future. And this is useful in classification and regression problems. Unsupervised data most of the time is available in our situation. It does not predict or find anything specific because it is an indirect evaluation, or its evaluation is qualitative. No labeled data available. Then the algorithm has to learn through the existing process that it undergoes, and that is popularly known as backpropagation algorithm. Third most popularly used in image analysis again is reinforcement learning. It is an approach of AI. Of course, the entire machine learning and deep learning is the subset of AI, where based on positive and positive reinforcement, there is always a reward given. And this reward always maximizes the performance. So in a quick look in the diagrams, you can see there is input. There is a training possible because of labels in supervised. There is no label available, so it is just input and output. And in reinforcement learning, there is input, output, and reward. So I skip this slide because this is very basic. As a black box model, this is something which is close to how human brain works, or an approach which is appropriately equivalent to the nervous system. It is never even close to the human nervous system, but it is derived, or it is said that it is derived from a human nervous system. This is a typical diagram of a single neuron and structured layered neuron structure here. A single neuron was able to perform simple tasks such as logical functions. It was able to give solutions for AND or XOR problems. People thought that if we increase the complexity, the performance of these neural networks failed on complex problems. So researchers, scientists started developing or started introducing something called as a hidden layer, and started developing a layered structure of neural network. So when layer comes, our input experiences variation in the data when it passes from input till output. And in this process, in the entire process, how exactly the neural network learns is through a very popularly known algorithm called backpropagation. So here I will take a small amount of time in order to tell you briefly about activation. I assume that most of you are aware of these functions, what exactly used and how exactly we arrived to the highest possible optimization is again something in computer science field called as no free lunch theorem, which says that on a specific data set, a specific algorithm works well, whereas it completely fails on the other data. So I would not mention anywhere specifically that we used VGGNet or ResNet or GoogleNet, and that worked best. In fact, we started with the simple k nearest neighbor algorithm, that classifier. And we went on, and as I said, the advantage is all the algorithms, their programming languages are readily available. We need, in MATLAB these days, we have an app, machine learning and statistic app, where we generate our data, label it, and then we feed. So labeling and generating data, or in fact, generating and labeling the data is the huge task in machine learning algorithms. So I take a quick look at activation functions, which is the first point I have written. We have binary step function, which gives output as 1 or 0. But again, we can see in binary, if we take the gradient, the slope or differentiation, it is always 0. So there is no scope for update of any parameter in the journey of signal from input to output. Whereas what we need to update, we need to update the bias. We have to give a bias. We have to tell the neural network initially that you must get the answer on this particular side, whether it is left side or right side, whether it is 1 or 0. But we need to define a bias, And based on this bias, we define the neural network's learning starts. Then along with the bias, there is something called as variance. Because when we weights, of course, there are weights with every neuron, but with weight and bias, there is something called as variance. And this variance bias trade-off keeps us busy in the remaining 30 or 40% of the work time. I can roughly say, as I'm repeating it, 50% of the time goes in data collection and data polishing, making it with the proper labels, getting the expert opinion on the data that whether yes, it was thermal runaway or not. So 50% of the time goes in that. Remaining good amount of time, 30 to 40% goes in a specific algorithm that we have chosen and identifying whether I started correct or not. So the bias was correct or not, weight was correct or not. And this is a very popular problem in neural networks, which is called as bias variance trade-off. Finally, we settle down on certain issue where sometimes bias wins or sometimes the variance wins. So bias is initial value that we define, that we assume that the output should go in this direction. Variance is the error that we get between the actual and what we obtained. So scientists started finding interest in multi-layer networks when a single layer network was not able to perform some of the complex tasks. As I said, introducing a non-linearity is also a very important task in neural networks. That's the reason we needed activation functions. So binary step function failed, people concentrated on linear functions. Again, there were issues related to linear functions such as gradient does not become zero in linear functions. So it remains constant. So it remains constant means it tells that 0.001, that is the end result. So we know that the 0.001 we have reached, but we have never reached the zero. Then came the sigmoid, which is most popular one even today in neural networks. The sigmoid function, it gave a very clear picture of non-linearity between input and output. So we wanted f of x, which gives a non-linearity, and sigmoid became popular. Then came tan hyperbolic, tan h, and now the most popular one in deep learning networks is ReLU. It is rectified linear unit. The reason why it became popular, I've explained it in one slide. So we should have, or we must have, a clear in-depth understanding of back propagation. So to tell you quickly in what happens in back propagation in 2 or 3 lines is, we have defined weights, we have defined the activation function, we are ready with the inputs, number of elements to be considered, or number of inputs to be considered on one end. Once we are ready with it, the learning starts, the computation starts. This is an iterative process in which each node, in blue color you can see each node which has activation function, decides a particular output. We compare it with adjacent outputs that we have obtained or we have predefined. Error is always back propagated. So theoretically, it looks very simple or very surface level, but when we do it with the mathematics, it all involves only and only partial differential equation. Because unless we know that this particular parameter is differentiable, it can be differentiated, and that to partial differentiation, then we can make a commanding decision on what need to be passed further and what needs to be passed back. So this is one animation I have taken from reference, which is medium.com, a very popular site for all of us to learn machine learning and AI related concepts. You can see here in this diagram, there are some parameter values already defined. Okay, let me start now. Now with weights and initial weights, yeah, you can see the forward propagation is happening. Once forward propagation happened, there is error calculated. And okay, it is now in the second cycle now. I need to explain this in a single cycle. I've shared this reference. You can refer the material on this site and understand this with the example. It's always better to understand back propagation with any one simple example, whether it is AND gate or NOT gate, XOR gate, but we get a clear idea as to how parameters are initiated, how they are computed in forward direction, and how the loss function, at the end you can see here loss function, it gives the error and that is back propagated, sent to again previous nodes. So this is about back propagation. Yeah, this is one slide, again an animation showing variety of techniques such as stochastic gradient descent, momentum. Then there is something called as NAG, which stands for a concept very unique in optimization known as Nestover accelerated gradient. Then there is ADAGARD, adaptive gradient, adaptive delta, and the RMS prof. We can make a very clear decision from this animation shown that there are some algorithms which are reaching zero, reaching faster, but they are far away from zero. And of course, in this case, the zero is indicating that parameter I forgot to mention is called as RMS. It is root mean square error. The difference between the input and output, what is actually expected and what output we are getting. So that's one concept here, important in neural networks. SGD is very popularly used. So I would suggest all to read this stochastic gradient descent. SGD in fact is related to backpropagation because backpropagation algorithm learns with the stochastic gradient descent method. Fine. In the next slide, we came to CNN. I think I'm not running out of time. It's 4:15, right? So why we entered into convolutional neural network from neural networks? Till now, I talked about machine learning. It includes KNN, as I said, K nearest neighbor. It talks about decision tree, support vector machine, then random forest. We understood that all these methods are well understood and well applied for time series signals, whether it is non-stationary or non-Gaussian time series. When it comes to an image, an extraordinary algorithm developed for image analysis or image classification is subset of machine learning, again known as deep learning. So we saw that amount of data started increasing. All the old learning algorithms saturated in their performance. The deep learning has taken off and it has given an extraordinary performance compared to all the old learning algorithms of machine learning. But when we look at x-axis, the amount of data, what we say, the problem that I'm explaining, we haven't still reached to that level of amount. Okay, microwave furnace is not giving me, or that microwave furnace placed camera is still not giving me an amount of data which Facebook gives, or an amount of video that YouTube gives. So we are still aware that we have limitations, but with what small data available, we have started with the deep learning. Deep learning is subset of machine learning where, again, this diagram says car, not car, but here we should say whether for our applications, whether it is a heated, overheated product or normal temperature. So it is exceptionally effective. DL is exceptionally effective when we have known learning patterns. DL algorithms are used for tons of information. It is useful when the provided data is huge in terms of Facebook of data, Facebook of images or YouTube videos or number of text tweets that we get from Twitter. Unlimited users and unlimited data. Okay. Difference between ML and DL, what we observed mainly was the model itself extracts the features from available filters and then it takes a decision. The end part of it, which is very similar, classification, which is again a neural network, it takes the decision whether the output is 1 or 0. So advantage of using DL was that complex part of feature extraction was eliminated completely. Yeah. Here, how CNN works, I skip this part. Most of you have an idea of CNN or a convolution, not CNN, but convolution. If you take heat map images as an input matrix, again, a digitized pixel value, then we have a convolutional filter of 3x3 or 4x4. These filters are of standard size. And in most of the models, ready models available, these filter sizes are not editable. That I don't know, we should say advantage or disadvantage, but I tried my level best in by going into programming details of Python. MATLAB at least allows a very little variation in functions design, but Python allows it. Python gives the code, all the codes and their internal structures free of cost. I tried changing the sizes of these filters, but it was not working. Clearly it was not working. There were errors thrown. We could not understand where we are going wrong. For images with 3x3, 4x4 standard filter sizes, they are working. But if I edit the filter sizes, it's not working. So that we should not say as a disadvantage, but that's a standard filter with which convolution happens. So once we convolve, we reduce the size and we get the convolved features of that particular image. So now can imagine this particular image is of image of heat map of product, and then we convolved it, we got the features. Of course, the algorithm itself has generated the features and we feed it to the classifier. So a simple pooling process after generating the features is to sometimes select the maximum value from the given matrix size. So you can see here there is 6, 4, 5 and 4. The maximum value is 6. It is selecting 6. 8, 5, 5, 8. It is selecting 8. 3, 6, 7, 9. It is selecting 9. And 7. It is selecting 7. So this maximum pooling is choosing the maximum feature size in order to reduce the size of the image again. Next, as I mentioned earlier, activation functions, they introduce non-linearity and they are useful when we have complex data. So if some slides have repeated explanation, please excuse me. Okay. Yeah, this is the ReLU activation function. Yeah, activation function again I placed because of ReLU only. I mentioned earlier about sigmoid, tanh, binary, linear, but the most popular one is now ReLU, rectified linear unit. Rectified linear, the reason why it becomes popular because of its speed. It trains much faster. It accelerates the convergence of stochastic gradient descent. And there is some linearity also in rectified linear unit as its name suggests. So it is into saturating form. It is less expensive in terms of operation again because we are more worried about hardware part now. Let's say tomorrow as a tab center what I showed, if the company is willing to give it as a product to their customers, then we are not going to give it with a system with 8 GB of RAM and 2 GB of GPU. We are going to give it with a simple microcontroller such as, which you can imagine, dedicated Texas Instruments microprocessor or PIC microcontroller, or PIC microcontroller I don't think will survive, but the dedicated Raspberry Pi which comes now with a better RAM. So investment of 4,000 to 5,000 in a product like this with algorithms, free of cost algorithms, is something economically and business wise viable, but giving it a control with which is again a system specific approach will be a very difficult. It has to be an embedded system given with the embedded system as an embedded product. Okay, so it trains faster, it has less operations, expensive operations compared to sigmoid, and it is implemented by simple thresholding a matrix at 0. It is more expressive, it gives more expressive results because you can see in the diagram there are 0 values and then after 0 all the positive values have variations. Okay, so there is something called as gradient vanishing problem. We have not gone through SGD in more depth, but gradient vanishing is when there is the final possible direction is lost and the gradient or the slope itself is vanished. Okay, overfitting is one issue experienced during this experimentation also. All the learned hypotheses worked well with the data that we recorded, but when we went with a new data, with a newer experiment setup, the performance was very poor. It was poor at an extent where we just jokingly said that manual intervention is much better compared to this kind of algorithms. But no, once a machine learning or deep learning algorithm is developed, once a model is developed, it is like a child. It has to learn from the data available, same data available. It is not that you develop a machine learning model Today you test on thermal images. Tomorrow you test on cat and dog images. Day after tomorrow on MRI images. No. On the same data set, if a ML algorithm trains with large amount of training size, then its performance starts improving. So overfitting also was a major issue, but there are solutions to avoid overfitting, such as some of these elements or some of the nodes of neural network are dropped. They're removed randomly along with their connections. You can see the difference in the diagram. Here it's a fully connected layer, and some of the connections like here and here, they are removed. How this gives a better performance is very well explained in this paper, Nitish Srivastava, Dropout, a simple way to prevent neural network from overfitting. Then we used techniques such as regularization, decaying weights, getting big weights, but these are all trial and error. Raghavan sir pointed out rightly in my last lecture that most of the time the students sit and keep on doing the experimentation, but they don't arrive. The issue happens because every time we either take a different model or we go with a different algorithm. A single algorithm initially developed, so the model is developed first and it is trained over and over on same data set, can always give us a better performance. Then we need this small variations such as dropout, or there is early stopping also. Let's say we have decided n number of epochs. Sir, n number of epochs for a particular then there is always a possibility that we just stop well before the n number of epochs we reached. So early stopping is also one criteria for regularizing or getting better results. Okay, this was another technique. I don't go into this, how data acquisition was done. Okay, now in experimental work, we watch what we did. Not running out of time, right? 4:25. Okay. Verifying and validating of linear and non-linear model was our main task. So we took that tabs in the same one which I mentioned earlier in the previous slide. Okay. Then the very fundamental concept, as I mentioned earlier, was to find out what is the relation between the EM field distribution inside that chamber. We decided to go with the Bible, I should say, with reference book for us, that reference 1, which I mentioned. All of you can, interested, can download that and read it thoroughly. So we started to go with that reference and use their technique of doing the scalar addition and vector addition principle. So we decided to do a superposition. Superposition was for the number of sources that we consider. So in the first, second, and third part, as exactly given in that book, we did experimentation with individual feeding. Then we took 2 or more feeding. And in the last part, we did the validation by again doing the addition, scalar and vector addition. So we followed exactly the same procedure. There was nothing new done other than the procedures which are mentioned here. The only difference is in this particular reference, or you can say the report, they have used a different microwave heating chamber, the different microwave, the different data generator. So they have definitely different data set compared to our data set. And definitely the algorithm used in this is not deep learning network or deep neural network. Okay, this was the experimental setup. Very similar setup we did on a fixed piece of metal. So I'm going now quickly through the profiles that we obtained for various times 0 to time 10 seconds. We saw that with 5 different sources, the temperature variations were, these are labeled values, of course. This is not something which we obtained. We labeled it later by taking again the reference from 1. So heating pattern of a specific source at a different time at same trial levels was initially recorded. That was the only difference. We observed that heating rates are directly proportional to the heating power. So it was obvious that we must control powers in order to get the correct heating rates, or to avoid thermal runaway or local hotspot. This was the plot done with measured points and the heating rates. Again, in the second step, as I said, we took multiple feeds. Unfortunately, for multiple feeds, the problem for us was only one recording instrument. We had only one recording instrument, so we need to remove that instrument and place it in a different position. So here, I would not say this exactly time intervals we matched compared to the reference that I have taken. We had a very different time intervals. That was one disadvantage in our cases. So when multiple feeding sources we used, it was at a different time interval, because the recording of images was done at a different time interval. Let's say I have a product at this particular instant. Now the time is 4:28. If I'm taking images from a particular source at 4:28, and let's say if I switch from one point to the other point, it takes 10 to 15 minutes. By that time, the heating profile of material has drastically varied. So if we can use multiple points at which measurements can be done, we get a more clear data recording. So again, I should say the 50% of work in data recording becomes more advanced if we have more sophisticated algorithm, more sophisticated setups for recording the images. Again, the same heating trials were recorded for the first 3 trials. Then we validated these results. Of course, as in deep neural networks and in any machine learning algorithms, we have a cap of 70% and 30% data set. 70% of the data set goes in training, and remaining 30% is divided into 15% for the test and validation. So we tested on linear and non-linear models. So we got very promising results. It was, you can say, a pilot study. This I was mentioning in my last lecture also when I talked on this topic. It was a pilot study. Pilot study means it is already done by someone, and we tried it with our existing setup, not with the HEP setup. So tomorrow, if you have a laboratory in which you have microwave heating or microwave oven, by placing a sensor camera, thermal camera, if we get images for any product for that matter, food industry also we can think, and avoid overheating of a particular product. Sometimes we find it, even manual bakeries, the bread that we get, it is sometimes heated too much. There is a manual control. Even we can imagine something where such kind of food processing is happening, powder or juice making or microwave heating for food products to increase the shelf life. Even that industry is having one application area. This is again comparison with lot of data. I don't go in graphs much. Right. Finally, as I said, it was an intention of neural network to minimize the mean squared error, MSE. And with 3 techniques such as extended Kalman filter, back propagation with momentum, and the last is sliding window back propagation. But we switched here from the conventional neural network to deep neural network. We followed the procedure-wise same techniques, but we moved from conventional neural network to deep neural networks. We used all 3 techniques and saw how we get the performance of temperature variation, and result of the neural network approach was very promising with sliding window back propagation. This is the temperature profile up to which 70 degrees Celsius, up to which we get variation for a time of around 200 seconds. So that was the major approach we wanted. Of course, this plotting is done in MATLAB. EKF, extended Kalman filter, back propagation with momentum, SWBP. Now we have started on the same data with support vector machine once again. We have moved from again the deep learning networks to machine learning part, and we just want to check how the support vector machine performs. Because in many literatures, we have studied that support vector machine has been underrated. It has not been used at the extent it has to be used. Why we moved to support vector machine? A very clear indication that I gave earlier, that our data set is still not huge as compared to the images of Facebook or videos of YouTube. So we are again switching back to the machine learning algorithm, that is SVM. Okay. This was done for validation again with EKF, BPM and SWBP. Yeah. Exactly the same controller from reference. Sorry, I think it is reference 1 only. If I missed number somewhere, it is reference 1 only. Exactly same controller we defined, only the NN we made it CNN, convolutional neural network. So take the target temperature, develop a neural network algorithm, CNN algorithm, simulate it using well-trained network. What are the major temperatures are given to a PC through LabVIEW or MATLAB interface. And when there is a difference, you just feed it back so that the comparison can happen here. This is the point where we are doing the comparison between target temperature and what exactly we have obtained. So this is one again from a reference. The block diagram is from reference, but the change that we made here is to introduce CNN. Yes, this is exactly same as that of the fiber optic sensor and the infrared camera diagram that we have seen. A very small deviation of 0.6 to 1 degree centigrade is observed. Temperature deviation is observed for around 2,500 seconds of heating, and the simulated plant or the implemented plant is well controlled using CNN, and the final temperature window is very small. That is the conclusion. Okay, so I skipped this part because it is very similar. Feature scope, as I said, even in the last lecture, Raghavan sir pointed out how data can be obtained. We are in continuous touch with that industry, and many such industries which are working into microwave heating or any other kind of heating where electromagnetics plays an important role. Or if you want to introduce into antenna design where there is a possibility of optimization, we must approach them and get the data, because we always go to Kaggle or PhysioNet. PhysioNet is of course for biomedical. We get huge data. We apply algorithms also. We see that the results are extraordinary well. We get 99, 98% of accuracy and sensitivity and specificity. But the problem is when we go to the industry, actually sense the data using a simple sensor, take the data, digitize it, then becomes a challenging task. So customizing the system based on specific application. This was, as I mentioned earlier, is our goal now. We want Raspberry Pi or Arduino so that it is a dedicated software, dedicated hardware, and the programming done, which fits in with this developed system, and it goes as a system. We wish to apply some of the advanced deep learning algorithms also, but this is somewhere again we are going back from future to past, that we have switched now to SVM, because it has been told in the literature that SVM outperforms in some cases when we have less data set. So this is final approach. Already mentioned, it is repetition. Optimize the software and hardware. Go with a light processor, not the system always with 16 or 8 or 16 GB of RAM and GPU and all that, but with even a lighter possible hardware available, can we get the optimized performance in time and performance. Okay, now let's have a quick look at machine learning and antenna design. Should I ask madam, is there any question in chat?
Actually, there was one question, but while you were explaining, I answered that question.
Okay.
And I got the reply also that it is true. And by
Yes.
that time you were also explaining the same thing. You were
Okay.
talking about the training and testing, the percentage of data, 70% training and 30% testing data kind of thing.
Yes.
So that question was based on that only. So it's okay
Okay.
now.
Yeah. So this is, I again, once again say that is not the field. This I started. Now I'm really interested. Means I have, after completing my research work, I have just kept that EEG and ECG aside, and now I want antennas because we, along with another college here in Belgavi, we have procured licensed CST, and now actually I'm going to start the work. So anybody who is very well in CST, and of course Tarang. There is no doubt that Tarang is going to be a great tool for us in future to work. So henceforth, I'm only going to focus on antenna design, and so I don't say I'm really great. A little bit of MATLAB programming, what I have done, I'll explain it with this block diagram, and then I think if you have any questions, you can ask. So that we will not run out of time. So we know we have all parameters. It's very similar to what we have done earlier. That's why that area I showed you, right? When you look at some city, you feel that this city is good. Then you feel like entering into the city. You probably don't worry about your ticket further to 5G, but you get down and try to enter into that city and see. Otherwise, you try to go to the next city. So antenna design is one such area now I want to explore where things will remain same, whether it is antenna design, microwave heating, biomedical, or I have seen papers. I'm sometimes back while pursuing my PhD, I was working with a very senior professor from civil engineering department who was exploring neural networks in seismic earth data. It's very similar to that of brain signal that we get because it is highly non-linear and non-stationary. So application areas finding is not at all a big task. We keep on giving small projects to our students based on what problems they see around. And as Madam mentioned in my introduction, Bennett University's Leading India initiative is there. There's a website also. Many such ideas are given, and not just that website, but many other sites are also there where IIT Madras is running one program. I'll share, give me a moment, I'll share the link of that. They are again nationwide initiative they are sharing into AI and deep learning. And they have floated projects in agriculture domain, IIT Madras. Let me tell you the name of the professor. He is Dr. Mitesh Khapra. And one more, I just forgot his name. I'll float that link in the chat box once I complete. So we have design specific parameters, frequency, gain, VSWR. We have initial design. We do EM analysis in CST, or I think a talk on HFSS was going on previously. I wish I could have done that, but then I was busy with some academic meeting. So I'm more interested in taking HFSS or CST software, design anechoic chamber, or the structure that I showed you, right from source, waveguide, the chamber. This was again, procurement of CST was a collaborative effort with the same industry which I mentioned. And then do the optimization part. So once we get the EM analysis done, we get the results, we expect some modification because it is never close to the values we expected, whether it is center frequency, gain, or VSWR. So we do some modification in the design. So how about doing this modification using neural network algorithm? Now to start here, I guess we can start because all these values, frequency, gain, VSWR, are numerical values. We start with a simple neural network, or KNN1, the basic one, K nearest neighbor. Apply it, see how optimization performance gives, and then reach to the final design. I think one such reference I took, and yeah, it was design of experiments term. This was, I forgot to mention the reference here, but this design of experiment and this particular block diagram was explained in one of the webinars organized by HFSS. Yes, if I'm not wrong, it was by HFSS. So optimization is the main target. How exactly we do it is possible if we have a deep insight on the data. Again, I mentioned the 50% of work is done if we have the right data with right labels, and then we pick up an algorithm and start working on it. So the question is, does the optimization gives really the insight on the antenna design? No, not really. We always, Raghavan sir had rightly pointed out at that time, I remember, that really a expert with deep understanding of antenna design is required in order to get the insight. So we need to keep on doing these experimentations. So that's it. This is the design of experiment procedure I have written. The main goal is to find the significant parameters and build a trained mathematical model, which is substitute to original design model, or it can be a ML or DL model also. So we have to see whether the data we get in the form of numeric, text, images, or video. Based on that, or if it is a time series, stationary or non-stationary time series. So anything that we get in this form will always help us in developing a neural network model, which starts giving performance slowly. So develop a model first, pick up a model, write the code for it, or there are references from where you can take the code, optimize it. You decide that these are the inputs I'm going to give and this is going to be my output. Then start training it over number of iterations. So this is conventional approach. Generate EM simulation, decide on what type of optimization you want to work on. If you meet the requirement, fine. Otherwise, again, go back to the first method. Whereas now we introduce what is called as machine learning model. We use a surrogate model using machine learning. Then we decide the optimization is done or not. We validate it. Again, here the question was asked. So we take 70 and 30% of data here. And then if everything is fine, if we meet the requirement, we go with the final design. Otherwise, we just iteratively, as I said, back propagation with movement, or sliding window back propagation. There are n number of types. Even if you don't want neural network, go with SVM. There is something called as least square support vector machine, which I explored, worked very, very well on EEG data set. So opportunities are there which we can explore. This is one result I obtained using MATLAB. Again, it was a pilot study with this reference that I got reduced side lobes and side lobes levels when optimization was done using ML algorithms. Here is the return loss graph. The same paper, they have reported it. They have reported that there are changes in return loss and VSWR. We just tested it, whether this kind of results we get. And it was, because it is a standard paper from a good journal, Ambient Backscatter Communications. VSWR versus frequency graph, again, the same article. Fine. So I think I should conclude the talk now with what little work I have done, so that we get some time to interact, in particular with Raghavan sir and Swapnil sir, madam also, and all other participants also can speak, give their ideas, ask me. Don't expect that I will be spontaneous to give the answer, because as I said, even this is a learning for me. How much I know, I can try to clarify. Okay. So heating using microwave is a very special phenomenon, because it is distributed with space. It is spatially distributed process with respect to the sources. Linear heating model, non-linear heating models, and neural network models. These three things